We've seen children take their own life because of the impact of the online internet and their interactions they're having on these children actually are very addicted to the devices. Some people have had their savings wiped out. Other people have had loans taken out in their name.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to this special segment of Salam Britain, where we're going to discuss the importance of safer internet day.
And today we'll be speaking with our expert of cybersecurity professional who will share his thoughts on the importance of creating a secure online environment. He will also offer advice on how to ensure that children and adults stay safe while surfing the web. So join us today as we explore the world of digital safety and security is Jamal Ahmed, the CEO of Kazient Privacy Experts.
Assalamu alaikum and a warm welcome to you, Jamal.
Wa alaikum assalam, and thank you very much for having me.
Alhamdulillah. I think you've come on a really good day. We're both mothers, always battling on the internet with the kids.
Yep.
You're on it too much. You're not, who are you talking to? What are you doing? Etc. etc. And safety obviously is one of those most important components of being on the web, not only for the children but also for entrepreneurs and businesses. And it covers a wide range of people. But why is the importance of safety? Why is that so important, especially for you in your job role as cybersecurity? Why is safety important for us online?
Well, I mean, think about it. One of the things I usually ask at the Privacy Pros Academy when I first meet my students is, would you rather give me your house keys for 3 hours or access to your phone? And they always say house keys. So your phones, especially any devices that we use, reveal so much information about you. And someone can collect some of that information, learn about your likes, learn about your dislikes, where you are, who your friends are, what your date of birth is when you're celebrating your birthday. And with that information, when they learn so much about you, they can then use it, people with malicious intention, to really cause damage. Some people have had their savings wiped out. Other people have had loans taken out in their name. So when they've gone to get a mobile phone, for example, no one's willing to give them a mobile phone because someone's committed fraud with their attacks. And other people have information that's quite private about them exposed. Some people are using that information to discriminate against other people. And we see also politically, people will be trying to influence what you do. They'll be influenced what you buy. So it's about having that freedom over your personal information to make sure that you have the rights and freedom so no one is impacting your right to be let alone. And especially when it comes to young children. So today's Internet Safety Day. And this was an EU initiative to make sure that young people are actually online. When they're online, they're safe, they're not getting bullied, people are not taking information from them, people are not actually trying to blackmail them to do things they don't want to do. Especially with young teenage girls, we see it's such a common challenge where they reveal some information thinking it's with their friends or they've trusted somebody, but actually it then takes them into a really bad place. And in really extreme cases, we've seen children take their own life because of the impact of the online internet and their interactions they're having on them. So it's a very serious matter. And what we are seeing an increase of is schools are getting children to use their iPads from nursery now. And then some parents are saying, well, I don't know if I want my children to use these, but when they go to school, they have them. Or other times, they're going to your friends, they're going to see their friends or your relatives' houses, and then they have the devices. So at what point does a parent draw the line and say, I don't want my kids to use this? You can't go to someone else's house and enforce the rules. And if you're trying to prevent something at home and then the school is encouraging the difference, how do we find the balance between those things? And essentially, today's theme is all about let's talk about it and let's have those conversations with children so they feel quite comfortable and they know there's an adult that they can trust. And let's say, okay, what are you doing actually when you're online? What games are you playing? Who are you talking to? How are you doing these things? Instead of saying how long are you spending on it, let's actually find out what they're actually doing. Talk about some of those things and empower them to make positive decisions about who they interact with, what kind of information they're sharing, how much information they're sharing. Are they actually sharing their location or not? And it's only by talking to our children and the young people around us that we can really start making them feel comfortable having those conversations with us. A lot of the time you'll see they're sat by themselves, they always seem worried, but we have no idea what's going on. They don't want to talk about it. It's because at some point they've been with a group of friends or they've been with a group of strangers sometimes, and they'll be having conversations, but at what point does that conversation go from being banter or fun to actually being bullying? And what I encourage young people to do is say, if it feels like people are laughing at you rather than with you, then it's an indication that you probably should start have conversation with an adult and see what's going on here. because ultimately, if left unspoken about, if left untackled, then it will have a detrimental impact on their actual mental well-being, and that will translate into other areas of their life. Then you see them performing poorly at school, and they become detached from the family. And it's because they're going through all of these challenges internally, we have no idea, and there's no way we can help them, because we never took the time to have those open conversations about how to use the internet responsibly.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the questions that come in my mind is for the children to use the internet properly and appropriately and safely. But do parents even know how to use it properly, appropriately, and safely as well?
Yeah, that's the challenge, especially with some of our communities where we've got parents coming in first, second generation.
Yeah.
And as they were growing up, they never had time to get connected. And over the last 5-10 years, we've seen a massive boom and an increase in the use of digitalization, especially with COVID, when children had to learn from school. They was all given devices, and that seems to become the norm now. And the way teachers are teaching at school, they're using more of these devices because there is so many benefits that come with using the internet. It's so powerful when used correctly, but it's finding that balance of how do we make sure we use this correctly and appropriately, and how do we then also learn what is safe internet practice so we can not only protect ourselves but also protect our children. Because sometimes some children might be like teenagers, they feel invincible, right? I used to feel like that when I can give up whatever I want, it doesn't matter, I've got nothing to lose anyway. However, when you put that information out there, it's out there. How are you going to control who gets access to it later down the line? How you feel right now might be okay, you might not care, but in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, when you're applying for a job, when you're applying for a position, and they look at your history, it might come back to bite you. So it's helping young people to understand that there are going to be consequences, and only put things out there that you're comfortable with. And what I kind of say is, if you was to go and stand in Oxford Street and you was to hand out information to strangers that walk past, what would you put on there? And if you wouldn't feel comfortable putting something on there, handing out to strangers, then don't put it out on the internet, because it's essentially the same thing. You can't see who's got access to it.
It's true. One thing I've seen in the boom of is that digital footprint. You know, you see some people, let's talk about influencers for a moment. You see them get a brand deal, and then all of a sudden that brand deal gets retracted because of something they said 5, 10, 15 years prior, you know. And it's true, what you're comfortable with now may change in the next couple of years, and you're not comfortable with it, and then it's hard to retract, you know, take that back. SubhanAllah. I'm always having that conversation with my son, he's 18. I'm like, just be careful. You know, the things that we say, the things that we do, it comes back somehow. And just like you said, employment, university, you know, all of that. And they do check nowadays. I know that employers are really big on checking on social media to see what your digital footprint is like.
I don't know. I think for me, what kind of stood out, because you mentioned, you know, children getting access to the internet younger and younger, right? And I think for a lot of parents, you know, giving them a tablet is like a distraction, right? I'm not going to act like I'm not a parent that's fallen into that trap. My youngest is 9. She's had a tablet before, and I've taken it away. And what I've done is I've given her one of my old phones, and there's no SIM card, and she has that because I've, you know, selected certain apps that goes on there. But obviously, in between certain apps, you know, you've got the educational ones, but you've got the entertainment ones as well, and it's hard to monitor sometimes. Sometimes I'll catch her and she's on YouTube and I'm like, what are you watching? So, you know, you have to take the phone back. And then how can we encourage parents to try and, you know, look on the security of their children and increase the security of their children while they are playing online?
Yeah, so the good news is there are a number of things we can do to actually control and manage what activities they're exposed to, what apps they're going to, what sites they're visiting. And you can sign up to something with your network provider, for example, and they can put parental controls in place, and you can block certain types of websites so you know they don't have access to them. Other cool things you can do is you can actually lock how much screen time they have, and when they reach that screen time, it'll automatically lock them out unless the parents give them permission, and you can often use that to reward good behavior and also punish them for bad behavior. But you're right, it does become very difficult, especially in this day and age when people, with the cost of living, people often, both mum and dad, have to go to work. There's not enough time. Some people have multiple children and lots of other commitments. And what we find sometimes quite easy is to give them a tablet and let the tablet kind of keep them distracted, do some of the babysitting, if you like. But what we're seeing is children actually are very addicted to the devices. And this is a challenge because this also has implications on how their brain functions, how they develop, and how they actually communicate. And I remember I was talking to some of my peers in the privacy space not too long ago, and they were saying there was this study that was done with children, and they put the children in a room and they wouldn't actually communicate. But when they gave them tablets or when they gave them a device, they were happy to chat on the devices, even though they're sitting in the same room. So what kind of society is this going to create moving forward? And then the question becomes, how can we empower our children to have that balance? How can we encourage young people to actually get involved in face-to-face conversations and limit themselves to on online conversations? And one of the biggest dangers when it comes to online interaction conversations comes from strangers. Sometimes we don't know who they are. Sometimes they might be pretending to be someone to get certain information. And one of the biggest attacks we see professionally is phishing attacks or social engineering attacks, where someone's got information from different places and then they've now got enough information to go and pretend to be you and cause lots of damage. So it's what information are they sharing? Who are they sharing those things with? And I would always encourage you only interact with people online that you've actually met in real life or you know actually who they are.
That's definitely, I think that for me, that's definitely a conversation I've had with all of them across the board. My oldest is 18, then I've got a 15-year-old and the 9-year-old, and it's one of those things because you know, there's some of these games, they're making friends or they're connecting with friends, and that's one thing. Don't request any friends, don't add any friends, just play the game. That's it. Keep it simple, because it is very dangerous, and there's too much happening right now for you to not take those precautions. So I think for myself, it's definitely something that I try and, with the 9-year-old, obviously, you know, you have to tailor the conversation in a way that it does. It's not scaremongering, but it's making you aware of this is the
I agree, it's empowering them to make the right decisions or to think about what they're doing, but also feeling comfortable talking to you. If something's gone wrong, they shouldn't feel like they have to hide it from you. I'm going to get in trouble. They should be like, okay, I'm not comfortable with this. I know it's time for me to go and have a conversation with my older brother or my sister or my mom or my auntie. As long as they have that support network and we're having those conversations about, hey, what did you spend time on today? What are you doing this week? How does this app work? And who do you interact with? Then we can help them and guide them and they feel comfortable having those conversations. And I think that's what the theme of this Internet Safety Day in particular is. It's about empowering young people and children to think about what they're doing, but feel comfortable having conversations. And for us also to understand what is it that they're actually doing. Like, we know they're on the tablet, we can hear all of these noises, but what are they actually doing? What are they getting from that? And then how does that actually tie in with some of the goals that they have? So, for example, a lot of parents will say they want their children to get into grammar schools. Okay, there are educational apps, as you mentioned, that can help towards that. A great app or a great resource that I always recommend to my family is Khan Academy. And they teach you how to do maths and they help you get really great at maths. It's even great for adults that want to improve their math skills. But there's really good resources out there that can help with their goals. But there's also lots of things to be cautious about, lots of dangers out there that are also going to have detrimental impact when left unchecked. And we need to make sure that we do everything we can to empower them to understand where is safe, where is grey, and where is danger. And then how to alert us to that danger so we can actually step in and do something about it.
Now, one of the things that I do when my kids are on their tablets and playing with other people, or even the PlayStation, I just go in the room and I just make silly noises, or I'll go in the room on purpose and annoy them on purpose. So whoever is on the other side is aware that there's always a parent around, because I think that's one of the things that why our children fall into danger, is because they're always left alone. And no one knows who's in the house with them or who's in the room with them. And so I make it a point every hour and a half, I'll just go in there and embarrass them, because it's important, you know. I need you to know that there is someone there, and for my child to know that I just haven't left him to his own devices as well, you know, because like you said, it is a dangerous world. But I wanna go to scams for a minute. I was watching a program about scamming, and I have made my phone foolproof. You can't get through it as a scammer, right? But there is still there are still many members of the population that are still getting scammed, and there are so many scams around. What are some of the things that we can do to make sure that our devices are safe from scams at home and on, you know, our phones, even banks? You know, what's some of the advice you can give to people to protect themselves?
Yeah, great question. And you're right, scamming and all of these malicious kind of attacks on individuals, we're seeing more and more of those. And in fact, because criminals are getting smarter and smarter, they're not trying to break into people's houses. What they're trying to do is break into your digital world and get as much information as they can so they can then use them against you. So the first thing I would say is, if you're getting an email, if you're getting some kind of communication, if you're getting a phone call and you're not expecting it, then be very cautious and always hang up or always try and contact them directly. So if you've got an email come through, go to the actual official website yourself and see if it's actually genuine. A lot of the times, scammers will actually get access to your inbox and watch and monitor what you're actually doing. And we see this in the business world a lot. So they will actually come in, they'll try and monitor, and they'll say, oh, you're with Boots, you've got a Boots card. For you, you're thinking it's just points. It doesn't matter. So they'll then send an email as Boots and say, hey, log into your account because something's gone wrong, or we've got a great reward for you. All you have to do is click on the link to claim it. And then they're getting more and more information. So always look out for suspicious emails. Stop all of the pop-up notifications, because you never know what's going to pop up and you might click it and what you're going to give access to. If you're not expecting something, or if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is going to be. Other things to be aware of is there's actually VPNs, virtual private networks, that you can actually use. You can get that for your whole household, and that creates a safe passage from your device to connect to the internet, so no one can actually see what you're doing, and they're available at very low cost now.
Okay.
The biggest problem, or the biggest challenge I see a lot, is people using the same password in lots of different places. So, for example, okay, let's go back to your Boots card. It might be that you use an email and a password for a Boots card, and you keep your password very safe, right? But the problem is, if you're using that same password with lots of different businesses, how do you know they're keeping that safe? How do you know they haven't had a data breach? How do you know someone hasn't accidentally sent that in an email somewhere? And this is what scammers look for. They look for low entry points where they can go and get an email and a password, because they know a lot of people will use the same email and password in lots of other places. And then they will take that and go to another account. Then they will go on your social media, and from that they'll get lots of information, right? Where do you live? One of your friends might come to pick you up. They can see your door number. There's a location, there's a photo with the location. They can see the street you live in. You're celebrating your birthday. Oh, they know your date of birth. You're going to say something to your mother, or you're celebrating, there's a name on the cake of your mother, right? All of this information, they piece everything together, and they get access to as much information as they can, so then they can launch an attack, empty your bank account, pretend they are you, lock you out of your accounts. And in business world, we see lots of ransomware attacks. And a lot of that is because employees have been careless with their passwords, or they use the same password in more than one place, and they've actually been monitoring their emails, and they're pretending to be somebody. Social engineering attacks is another one that we're seeing increasingly now. It's where someone's going to phone and pretend to be the bank, or pretend to be your boss, and they'll put you under pressure, and then they'll send somebody around, or they'll ask you to reveal lots of information. And under pressure, a lot of the time, people will give that information because they're really good at creating that sense of panic. They study psychology, they know how to get into the human psyche, and they will compel us or influence us to behave in ways we wouldn't otherwise. But in the heat of the moment, when you think something's like really extremely going wrong, or something's going to harm you, you're more open to taking instructions from an authority figure. And that's what they rely on. So if you do get those calls, hang up, call the official number from your mobile phone or from another line, and then check, is this actually genuine? And if it is, they'll be more than happy to share those things with you. Your bank will never ask you for your PIN number. Your bank will never ask you for certain information. And if they do, one of the things I like to do, and I get my family to do, is often when a bank calls you, they say, we have to verify you are who you say you are. So they might ask you 3 questions. I say, that's great, but before I do that, I need to verify you are who you say you are. So only my bank would know this information about me. So can you please tell me X, Y, Z? And if you get into the habit of that, you'll find that you're a lot more protected. And those scammers, they're not going to waste their time with you. Like, they're like, this person's too hard. They're just going to move on to the next victim. And so that's how you can protect yourself, is by just being precautious. Don't use the same password in more than one place. And when you are using passwords, try and use a different one, and use a mixture of capital letters, symbols, numbers. And if it gets too difficult, right, because we've got so many things we need to do, there's password managers we can use, and they will really help you to manage your passwords and have good hygiene.
You've been giving us lots of tips throughout this whole interview, actually.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I wanted to, I mean, you're speaking a lot about this fraud, right? And I think it's it just baffles me personally how these people have so much time, but it is literally a profession. They've got the technology, they've got everything at their fingertips to literally, like you said, monitor us as we're just going about our day-to-day business and just literally attack you to take your money. And it can be at any time. How can we help people who fall a victim to fraud? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so the first thing I would advise is make sure you report it to the authorities, and then get some kind of credit monitoring file reporting. So if someone's trying to take out a loan, if someone's trying to do some kind of damage, you'll get an alert and you can actually report it to CFAS as well, which means when you go to apply for something, there'll be extensive checks. Yes, it's going to take you a little bit longer, but at least you know you're protected.
Yeah.
So credit monitoring, making sure that you're aware of what information you're actually sharing online, those are really good things to do. If you have been the victim of a breach, then the first thing I would say is contact all of your banks, make sure that you actually cancel all of your cards so that nothing further can be done with those things. If you're not sure if you've been a victim of a breach or not, the best thing to do is to have good hygiene when it comes to your statements. So what they'll do is they look for small transactions. So they'll make like a £1 transaction or a £2 transaction just to see if you pick it up and they can get away with it. And then the next thing you know, they're like, oh, we've got away with this. This person's not really looking at the statements. They just wipe out your bank account. So keep an eye out on your spending. Make sure that you recognize all transactions. And if you don't recognize something, then get in touch with your bank straight away, report them to the authorities, and make sure that you actually go and change all of your passwords everywhere. And we mentioned earlier, you can use password managers. They will actually help you. So make sure that you're on top of those things. And when it comes to sharing information, be careful what you share and who you share it with. That is the first thing we should be doing, is thinking about how much information we're putting out there and who actually we're giving it to. And if there's no benefit to you in sharing that, then don't. And the other thing is, when you're sharing information on social media, you can actually restrict it to who can see that information. So if you want to share things with your friends and your family, that's fine. But you've got a setting when you post that only your friends or your connections should be able to see it. You don't have to make everything public.
Great
Just
advice.
Karen,
Yeah.
that is some brilliant information,
Absolutely.
brilliant advice. And if you are using the same password, as Jamal said, please try and change it, inshallah. Just protect yourselves as much as possible.